Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
An intense, long-lasting atmospheric river is moving across California, impacting millions of people. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. The storm unleashed record rainfall on Los Angeles as it made its way south to San Diego. As KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer shows us, North County was the first to feel the effects.
A severe storm has already hit Santa Barbara, Los Angeles, and Orange counties and made its way into San Diego County as well. As the very wet and windy weather is coming down from the north, areas that are expected to get hardest hit on a local level are communities in North County, like Oceanside and Fallbrook.
So we've had a lot of not only response from our specialized teams like our water rescues, but also our hand crews and our fire engines just helping with preparedness for the public, sandbagging, helping people with flooding situations.
2 Cal Fire teams, including one in Jamul and another at San Diego Del Dio's Fire Station 77, are ready for swift water rescues, says Fire Captain Mark Bales. He says the last few weeks have been busy across the county, and they're on high alert.
Majority of our target hazards here are any of our flood control channels. So any of our city areas like Escondido here that has their large flood control channel that comes from the foothills all the way down through Harmony Grove and Elfin Forest. That's a big target hazard. We've had rescues there in the past.
The flood-prone State Route 78 experienced storm-related issues that caused some closures and detours, and the rains could make travel difficult on other local freeways as well.
Particular for 78, one of the biggest problems is there's a creek that runs parallel to the freeway. And so when that creek raised up its water level from all the rains, our drain drains into that creek and that water just backed up.
Governor Gavin Newsom declared a state of emergency in Southern California counties due to the storm, including San Diego. Flood risk is water crossings at Country Club Drive in Escondido. And it's important to remember that no matter how deep, don't drive through flooded roadways. Even just 6 inches is enough to make a car lose control. The National Weather Service says San Diego County will see the highest rain and flooding impacts tonight into Tuesday morning. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
In communities to our north, the storm is causing widespread power outages. And as Ivan Rodriguez reports, there's still a threat for mudslides and life-threatening flooding.
Millions of people across Southern California remain under a high risk of excessive rainfall. Early Monday morning, crews were busy rescuing people across the state trapped by flooded waters. Nicholas Pasculi, spokesperson for Monterey County, says even though they have high capacity in their reservoirs, they'll be keeping an eye on water levels.
The biggest thing we're concerned about is watching the river levels, of course, because oftentimes the rivers don't reflect the amount of water that's come down until the water comes off the mountains and the watershed.
Parts of Los Angeles, where the heaviest rain is located, are forecast to receive close to half a year's worth of rain by Tuesday. By the end of the storm, parts of Southern California could see between 4 to 8 inches of rain, with higher elevations seeing 8 to 16 inches, and a considerable amount of snow in mountains and foothills. Officials warning for the potential for life-threatening flash flooding and landslides in central and southern parts of the state. Some people who were preparing for this storm felt there was only so much they could do.
We can be prepared as we want, or like the county could do whatever they want, but like Mother Nature takes its course.
The storm is expected to pound Southern California through Monday night.
We could use a break from Mother Nature, that's for sure.
Ivan Rodriguez, KPBS News.
The city of San Diego and points south were spared from the heavy rain for much of the day. KPBS reporter John Carroll says the city and county are working together to make sure residents impacted by floodwaters have what they need.
Those of a certain age may have found a familiar song from the early 80s playing in their minds today. Here Comes the Rain Again.
We've been messaging 2 to 3 inches of rain for several days now. And the rain is probably coming in maybe a little slower than original forecast, but it's still expected to come in earnest this afternoon and especially tonight.
National Weather Service meteorologist Alex Tardy says tomorrow will be a day to batten down the hatches.
We're also expecting some localized thunderstorms Tuesday afternoon. And those are something that are common behind atmospheric rivers, and that can sometimes bring us some of the most significant rain. So we got to watch that closely tomorrow afternoon.
The city is working with the county to provide resources to those who have been and will be impacted by water damage, except at one location. On Friday, we received a press release from the county saying an assistance center for people impacted by the storm was being set up here at the Mountain View Community Center. But when we got here today, it was closed. That did not sit well with Julie Halverson. She works for the San Diego Unified School District. Part of her job is making sure students get safely onto their school buses after school. She wanted students to be able to wait for their buses in the warm, dry community center.
Well, I was surprised that they were closed for one thing because of community assistance when they said that it's to help, they are to help all the community that's affected by the flood.
A city spokesman told us they had no choice but to temporarily close the assistance center because the building sits right in the floodplain and it wouldn't be safe. Alex Tardy says we'll be through the worst of this storm by Wednesday morning, then just what he calls on and off showers until the weekend when the sun is forecast to once again shine over San Diego. John Carroll, KPBS News.
You can access assistance at either the Jackie Robinson YMCA at 151 YMCA Way or the Municipal Gym in Balboa Park. City crews did a lot of work clearing Chollas Creek ahead of more rain, but they couldn't get to everything. Coming up, why the problem is a lot bigger than the creek itself.
Well, it has been a mess across the Golden State over these last few days, and we aren't done yet. We are still tracking that heavy rain that caused so many problems with mudslides, debris flow, water rescues, major flooding. And while we are still talking about some heavy rain shifting into the region, and we aren't quite done with the showers as we head throughout the rest of the week, we're going to break down your forecast for you coming up.
Big changes could be coming to the U.S. immigration system if a bipartisan Senate deal becomes law. While the bill has an uphill battle in Congress if passed, it would grant new powers to the president. Gloria Pasmino breaks down the details.
Amid an intensifying migrant surge at the U.S. southern border and raging conflicts overseas, a bipartisan legislative proposal was unveiled Sunday to address these crises and dramatically change the U.S. immigration law for the first time in decades.
This bill is vital to America's future interests.
Among the changes, new emergency authority for the executive branch to restrict border crossings if certain numbers are reached, raising the legal standard of proof to pass the initial screening for asylum, expediting the asylum process from years to 6 months, and a new process for U.S. citizenship and immigration services to decide asylum claims without going through the courts.
All the things that we build into this to make this a much stronger system, gaps that are in the law, get closed in this structure.
The $118.2 billion package also provides critical aid to key U.S. allies abroad, including additional support for Ukraine, security assistance for Israel, as well as humanitarian assistance for civilians in Gaza and the West Bank. While Senate leadership is pushing for passage,
We have to persist because this legislation is too important to the country.
the compromise faces an uncertain future. GOP House Speaker Mike Johnson calling it dead on arrival, despite demands from Republicans to contend with the border crisis.
We have to decide as Republicans, what are we going to actually do about the border?
In New York, I'm Gloria Pasmino.
California Senator Alex Padilla is speaking out against the border deal. He argues it would dismantle the U.S. asylum system and, quote, cause more chaos at the border, not less. Padilla also says the proposal does not include a path to citizenship or for dreamers or for farm workers. Election season is here and ballots have started to go out to registered voters. With the recent rain, people in neighborhoods that saw flooding may not be able to receive their ballots in the mail. But as KPBS reporter Alexander Nguyen explains, they can still cast their vote.
On this gloomy first day of voting, it was quiet at the Registrar of Voters' office in Kearney Mesa, save for a very loud leaf blower. But the cold gray sky, however, didn't stop Ryan Trabuco from his yearly tradition.
I've been the first person here at 8 a.m. on the first day of early voting for the last 10 years.
He says voting is the only way to get your voice heard.
If you're motivated and you want your voice heard, you show up to vote. That vote not only counts for the presidential race, but it counts for so many different races and elections and ballot measures up and down the ballot.
For mayoral candidate Genevieve Jones-Wright, it was an important moment to share with her 14-month-old daughter.
It's just a different feeling walking into the Registrar of Voters or walking into a voting center to cast your ballot.
With the flood damage from the storm last week, some voters may have a difficult time exercising their right to vote.
Right, folks may not have even mailboxes to receive a ballot.
Isel Maganda Chavez is the Civic Engagement Director at Alliance San Diego. She says the election isn't top of mind for these folks, but it's important that they vote.
Especially if they're going to be voting around city positions, right, that will make decisions about the infrastructure of our city to come. So
if your ballot was damaged or destroyed, you can request a replacement ballot online or at the Registrar of Voters' office or your local vote centers. Registrar of Voters Cynthia Paz says the key is to vote early.
The weather's been a little rainy, so take advantage of those early days to vote.
There are different ways you can drop off your ballot. You can do it here or drop it off here at one of the many drop boxes around the county. Or you can mail it or drop it off at your local post office. For those needing more time to research the issue to help you make an informed choice, visit kpps.org/voterhub for more information. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
GOP presidential candidate Nikki Haley is getting more vocal in her attacks on former President Donald Trump. She even made a surprise appearance on Saturday Night Live this weekend, taking digs at her former boss. Julia Benbrook has the latest on her fight to stay in the race for the White House.
Former President Donald Trump doesn't stray away from criticizing his challengers.
Who the heck is so fancy?
His last Republican opponent standing, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, has long avoided taking Trump head on. But in recent weeks, she's been turning up the heat.
He's made it chaotic. He's made it self-absorbed. He's made people dislike and judge each other.
Over the weekend, Haley made a surprise appearance on Saturday Night Live, questioning why the former president won't join her on a debate stage and highlighting the frontrunner's age and recent gaffes.
Are you doing okay, Donald? You might need a mental competency test.
This comes as both candidates campaign in Haley's home state of South Carolina. While she faces calls to drop out of the race, Trump faces an array of legal issues.
They want me to get out of the race because he's got to raise money for his legal fees.
Recent polls have shown that Trump still holds a commanding lead in South Carolina. Reporting in Washington, I'm Julia Benbrook.
A culture war in Coronado is brewing over reading to kids at the library about Christmas in Christian terms and LGBTQ content. KPBS's Amita Sharma reports national coverage of the dispute has triggered scores of threats against library staff.
This Fox News segment featuring Coronado resident Rachel Reyes ran during the holidays.
There's a new war on Christmas, and Navy SEAL wives are fighting on the front lines. They're claiming the Coronado, California Public Library is refusing to let them have veterans read patriotic books, and even books about Christmas to children. The moms claim instead the library is promoting sexually explicit books to minors.
The holidays are over, but the controversy, fueled in part by the segment, continues. Coronado officials are now working on a response to a demand letter sent by Reyes' lawyer, Jeffrey Hall. Hall states that the library discriminated against Reyes by refusing her request to host a story time on the origins of Christmas from a Christian viewpoint, on grounds that it violates the separation of church and state. Coronado officials refused to comment, but Carl Luna, president of Friends of the Coronado Public Library, says Reyes was not the victim of discrimination.
You don't get to walk into any public library and say, I'm going to take that chair and do a program and call it a library program. The story times are a core library function. It's something that if you're going to do a story time at this library and any other library, it has to be run by the library. They're liable for content. They have to go through the books.
Luna also rejects the narrative that the Coronado Library is unpatriotic.
We have story times which bring in our military families. A big supporter of 4th of July parade. We have military exhibits at the library. In addition to that, there's a veterans and military active duty personnel resource center with staff dedicated to helping them with anything they need as they transition to life in Coronado and dealing with military programs. There's a huge military collection here.
Following the coverage from Fox and other news outlets, library staff received dozens of vicious online messages, including threats like this one, quote, "Will the staff please pour gasoline on their bodies and torch themselves?" Luna says the hostilities spread fear among the library staff.
When you are saying things like that to another person, it doesn't matter the underlying cause, whatever righteousness you may think was on your side, you are deliberately trying to create terror in somebody else. That is an evil thing to do. You want to have a conversation, have one. Don't be doing this.
Coronado resident Jessica Tompayne is married to a former Navy SEAL and is also represented by Hall in the dispute with the library. She says the vitriol goes both ways.
We're being called bigots, people of hate, KKK, Karens, Nazis. I mean, you name it, we've been called it.
Tompayne objects to certain pictures and books in the children's section. One such book is The Rainbow Parade. It was read during toddler story time at the library last June.
The premise of the book is uplifting. It's the story itself is okay. The illustrations are what are really called into question.
One shows the back of a nude man. Another smaller one shows a male couple in what looks like BDSM gear. Tompayne says she's not advocating for censorship or book bans, just for common sense. She wants books like The Rainbow Parade to be out of the reach of young kids, and that any book in the kids section containing nudity or sexualized material be clearly labeled as such.
We have ratings for movies. We have ratings for music. So why are books any different?
Hall is threatening to sue Coronado unless the library segregates those books, refrains from including them in story time, and Rays is allowed to host reading events even if the content is religious. Coronado city officials say on their website they are in the process of responding to Hall's letter and that staff is working with the women to, quote, explore the nature of their complaint. Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
While many families in Southcrest are bracing for the worst in this storm, a longtime homeowner there says he is traumatized. His home is uninhabitable after sustaining damage caused by more than 6 feet of water left from the storm 2 weeks ago. Volunteers are helping him gut walls and salvage his valuables. He says he hopes the rain this time won't destroy the work that he's already done.
This is the worst I've ever seen. I mean, now to this day, believe it or not, inside my rental van, I bought a life jacket, a vest. Really, that's the only thing that I can have peace of mind.
And Richard also says he's now being harassed by people trying to buy his home, and he is fearful of squatters. The city says police are in the area to prevent criminal activity. The city of San Diego did a lot of work in Chollas Creek to get ready for more rain, but they did not fix everything. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says some small tributaries into the creek remain clogged and prone to flooding.
When Diane Armenta looked into her 36th Street backyard on January 22nd, she was surprised to see a large pond. Water that's supposed to flow downhill toward Chollas Creek couldn't. Fences and walls were holding it back. She says some obstructions were put up by a homeless man.
And with this backage that he put up here, it stops the flow of, you could see all the leaves down there. Pretty soon they're going to be on top of where the gate is. And then the next property over, there's a retaining wall that holds back the water. And there's a small little hole there that should let the water go through, but it doesn't.
Armenta feels like the city should be clearing out the obstructions and making sure the area drains properly.
You know, I shouldn't have to live this way, and I feel they're double dipping because they get money from my taxes for this easement, and they don't maintain it. Here, I have to pay somebody to come in and take care of it.
But I'm not sure they could have anticipated what was coming here, and I think the residents knew it because they've been suffering from chronic flooding for years.
Leslie Reynolds works with Groundwork San Diego Choyas, an agency that's long advocated for improving the natural environment in the working class neighborhood.
So that we can start to advance solutions that are not just gray infrastructure, culverts, and pipes. We need green infrastructure solutions. Why? This is not a drainage system. This is the Choyas Creek watershed ecosystem.
Reynolds says city officials have reached out and are interested in more community voices on a climate resiliency working group.
I think if any awareness, anything positive comes out of this is just people's awareness of how important it is for us to invest in infrastructure that they often don't see and don't realize it's there until it fails.
City officials say there are 200 channels that need attention in the city, and they only have the funding and people to clean up for a year. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
For most farmers, rain is overall a very good thing, especially for subtropical plants that can handle a lot of moisture. But when it pours, production stops, and that is when fungus can form on plants, making it tougher to sell them. The fungus is called botrytis blight, and it affects the buds, flowers, leaves, and bulbs of many plants. It's affecting one farmer's birds of paradise crops in Valley Center.
The money is falling from the sky, so that is good, generally speaking. Especially because I have good drainage, but some farmers with outdoor field crops like lettuce and things where all the produce is exposed, it can be problematic.
Farmers also need plants to be dry before they can sell them.
Well, it has been a mess through California, which is why I want to start you right off with your weather headlines, what you need to know as we head throughout the rest of the week. That heavy rain sticks around throughout the start of the week, but we aren't done with the moisture yet. We are talking about this atmospheric river that continues to pump moisture into the region, which means we are dealing with periods of showers throughout the week. So make sure you have that rain gear ready to go, though just in time for the weekend. We are going to start to dry out. Tonight, looking ahead, we're dropping down to a low of 54. That rain, of course, will stick around. And those storm impacts don't go away. We are still talking about potential impacts here as we head into the middle of the week with flash flooding, debris flow, mudslides, power outages, and heavy mountain snow. We even have a moderate and high risk there across San Diego County and through SoCal. So heads up, stay weather aware. We have a flood watch in effect for the region, which means flooding is still very much possible. Make sure that you are never driving through flooded areas or roadways. Turn around, don't drown. You never know how deep that water actually goes or what's even underneath that water. So it's just not worth it, folks. Try to avoid those areas. Meanwhile, very choppy conditions there right along the coast. We have a high surf advisory in effect through tonight. For San Diego County, tomorrow's forecast, well, more rain on the way. The pattern really isn't going to change too much from San Diego to Oceanside, even through Ramona. And I want to show you how this is going to play out because we're still cranking out that heavy rain late tonight into the overnight hours. Again, flooding is going to be a big concern as we head into Tuesday. Now, it's not going to be necessarily as widespread as we head into tomorrow, but still, we are talking about spotty showers that could produce some gusty winds and some heavier rain even throughout the day on Tuesday. And things turn a little bit more sparse, a little bit more showery as we head into the middle of the week. But like I said, we aren't quite done with those rain chances even Wednesday, Thursday, and even into Friday across a few areas. Now for the coast, cool with heavy rain for Tuesday, a couple of showers there. Wednesday and Thursday, we'll see a rebound with temperatures to the low 60s heading into the weekend. As for areas further inland, that rain sticks around throughout the week. So again, you're not going to want to forget that umbrella heading out the door. Meanwhile, in the mountains, very cold air on tap as we head into the end of the week, with even some snow for the start of the week. And as for the deserts, you're getting in on that action as well. Cool with rain for Tuesday, a passing shower on Wednesday, and temperatures staying pretty steady in the upper 50s to low 60s. We'll see some sun by the time the weekend rolls around. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Bree Guy.
And here's another look at today's top stories. Millions of people across Southern California remain under a high risk from rain. Los Angeles is seeing the heaviest rainfall. Forecasters say parts of the state could see between 4 to 8 inches of rain, with higher elevations seeing 8 to 16 inches by the end of the storm. Officials are also warning for flash flooding and landslides. The National Weather Service is forecasting San Diego will see the highest rain and flooding impacts later tonight into tomorrow morning. Governor Newsom declared a state of emergency for the county, with flood risks slight to moderate in most areas. Communities expected to be hit the hardest are in the North County, including Oceanside and Fallbrook. And we have more storm coverage on our website. Head over to kpbs.org/weather for the latest stories, as well as some important safety reminders and resources for flood victims.
I'm Amna Nawaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, prospects dim for a newly unveiled bipartisan deal to fund border security, Israel, and Ukraine. That's coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.